We're going to start basic and get into some, we're going to basically build from the base here. Triathlon, what is it? Most of you should know this, some of you may not, and that's okay. The sport is for everybody, so we're going to start simple here and get everybody on the same page. But triathlon is swim, bike, run. It's those three sports held back to back to back with no time stoppage. Meaning, when you're transitioning from the swim to the bike and then the bike to the run, your clock is still running. So it is those three sports, and traditionally it's always in that order. You're always going to swim first, you're going to bike second, and then you're going to run to finish. And when you say triathlon, that's a very general term. It's not quite as easy as just saying a marathon or a 5K or a 10K, which are very rigid distances. Here you see this chart of super sprint, sprint, international, or Olympic. Those terms are synonymous. Then you get into half Ironman and full Ironman. So the swim, bike, and run distances are usually fixed, but sometimes those will vary just because of the technicality of triathlon. It's tougher to produce all three of these courses and be dialed into exact distances. So there's a little bit of leeway that our governing body grants us with that. So just some background information on what we do. Chicago Triathlon Weekend consists of the super sprint, the sprint, and then the international and Olympic distance. All right, moving right along. History. Our sport is only 40 years old. I won't get into all the details there, but we were really founded in the late 70s with the Track Club of San Diego. They decided to add in biking and swimming into their running workouts and realized there was a pretty good fitness and there's a great physical gain that came with that cross-training. The sport has evolved. I think you know Ironman. You've heard that term. And the photo here on this screen is actually probably one of the most prominent photos that we have in our industry. It's a picture of Julie Moss crossing the finish line at Ironman in 1982. This was captured by ABC's Wild World of Sports, and people just were absolutely in love with the fact that this woman collapsed just yards from the finish line, and they were captivated. So this helped propel the sport, and beyond that, in 2000, triathlon was added into the Olympic movement. So between those two events, that's probably one of the biggest catalysts to why triathlon is successful right here and right now. There's been a lot of growth in the sport, and there's a lot of simple activations as far as why people jump into this. Really, the physical demand is the biggest draw, and we'll see that on the next slide here. Chicago Tri. If our sport is 40 years old, Chicago is 33. So we are one of the oldest and one of the largest. We actually are still the largest triathlon in the world, which is it's a great testament to the fact that we are landlocked. We're right here in the middle of the country. We do have an amazing lake to do some great training and great swimming within, but we are not on one of the coasts, which are where the bigger markets for the triathletes really reside. We are part of the Lifetime Tri Series. So if Lifetime has athletic events, we have 60-some athletic events across the country. We are part of the Tri Series, which consists of 12 events, names such as Oceanside Tri, the New York City Triathlon, Minneapolis Tri, South Beach Tri, which is coming up next month, so on and so forth. And we've had plenty of different title sponsors in the past, so we've always been the Chicago Triathlon, but sometimes people refer to us as Mrs. T's or Accenture. Now we are the Transamerica Chicago Triathlon. You can see our race weekend is 2 days of racing. Saturday, we have our kids race, and then we have our super sprint races. Sunday is the big day with both the sprint and then the internationals. In total, we have 9,000 triathletes who race, and again, that's the world's largest collection of athletes racing over the same weekend. We're pretty proud of that. So we might be a massive event, but what we've realized is that there's a lot of different needs, a lot of different abilities, a lot of different goals out there within the marketplace. So within our full weekend, we've developed a bunch of programs that really feed to specific audiences. So this is a really intricate chart that we put together to kind of show you if you're coming in to race triathlon and you have limited gear, or if you have a really competitive outlet, or if you want to come in with a relay team, you can see where your opportunity might lie within some of these worlds. I won't go through all these individually, but just food for thought. You're not just coming in as one person amongst 1,000 or amongst 3,000. You can really race within very specific groups. Part of that is why you guys are here and that's to talk about the Live Grit First Timers program. A quick background before Jacob jumps on here, but Live Grit is a tri-shop in the West Loop, right here in the city of Chicago. These guys are amazing partners, and they have a new shop with, well, you want to jump in here? I don't want to sell him too much, but he'll talk about the program a little bit and why this is so special and so unique in the Chicagoland market and why we're expanding this.
All right, guys. Well, I'm Jacob. I'm the general manager over at Live Grit, and on behalf of everyone over at the store, Gillian, the owner, and a couple of our athletes and team members there at the store, thanks for tuning in, and thanks for being a part of our program. Anybody who's thinking about joining the program, we really urge you to get involved. It's going to be a great time, a great community. Chicago Triathlon is one of the best events in the world, and we're really happy to be a part of it. What Hootie's done with the Chicago Triathlon has been really, really impressive in the last few years and made an event that's allowed us to share in a lot of the ideas that we had as a store. Like Hootie said, we opened just a year ago. Our tagline is that we're the Never Intense Triathlon store. So everything that we do is about triathlons, but it's just as much about the community as well. We have a couple of pictures of some of our athletes from last year's triathlon up here now, and everything we're doing is about the athlete experience. So regardless of how fast you race, how frequently you race, how serious you take it, you have a place in our community, and that's where this program has kind of taken off. The sport's changed all of our lives, and we want to allow anybody who's interested in the sport to get involved without the intimidation, without the mess, and without the headache of being by yourself. So this First Timers program has a lot for the participants to be included in. First and foremost, we're going to have a 6-part in-store informational clinic series covering everything from the gear you're going to need, how to train, how to eat. Any questions that our athletes have, this 6-part series is designed to break down those barriers and answer any questions you guys might come up with. We're also going to offer some exclusive training and social events out of our store. We already do a lot of these events, whether it be our Tuesday night run, our weekly bike rides, our Monday night swims. In the summer, we take everything outside. We swim the lake once a week. We go out on a group ride once a week. You guys are going to get priority access to those as well. Any other event we have at the store, like I said, we're about triathlons, but we're definitely about the community and the fun that you can have as a member of this community. Sometimes we throw happy hours. At Christmas, we threw a sing-along. Anything that we do, you guys are going to have access to, and you're going to be one of the first people in because we really want to welcome you into our community. You're obviously going to get discounts on select product and services, whether it be some of the gear we're going to talk about later tonight, some of the fit, a bike tune-up, whatever it may be, we'll take care of it. You're going to have access to our personal shopper experience where you call ahead, outline some of your needs. We'll pull a team member aside and pick out some items that might work best for you. You get priority registration for the Chicago Tri Swim Clinic series, which is a 5-part series about teaching people to swim in the open water. I believe that starts at the end of May. I've been a part of that personally for the last few years, and Live Grit was there last year. It's the best way to get into the open water. On race weekend, we're going to give you private course talks. We're going to have some at our store, as well as some down at the multi-day expo. You'll get dedicated transition area and support, as well as those private transition racks, and most importantly, a private wave start. So when everybody's lining up at the start line, you're going to be with people that you recognize from the program all summer long.
Nice. Yeah, and as an added bonus, you guys, you know, triathlon has the potential to be complex. The Chicago Tri, being the world's largest, also has that same potential. What we've realized, and through a pretty good network of ambassadors, we actually have a liaison, a coach, a partner, a friend, who is jumping in to really manage you guys as a group. So when you have questions about where your transition racks will be located, when you're curious of when the swim clinics, registration might open, this is going to be your conduit and your go-to. So I'm going to introduce Rosalind Popham, who is an amazing triathlon expert here locally in Chicago. Rosalind, you want to jump in and say hello to the group?
Hi, guys. I just want to let you know that it is an absolute honor to be managing this group. My first triathlon was 26 years ago, and I don't know if you want to call me cursed or blessed, but I do remember what it is like to be a first-timer so long ago. But this race really has even more special meaning to me because my first race was the Chicago Triathlon in 1988. So I know how daunting this event can look and the obstacles that are out there for you. But I have been sitting down and handpicking a crew of experienced triathletes that are going to help guide you over the next 6 months. And this is going to be a core group of people that you're going to see and probably maybe even get sick of seeing so often over the next 6 months, but they're going to be at a majority of your first-timer program events. They're going to answer questions. They're going to assist you with tips. They're going to talk you off a ledge if need be. But we all have the same goal, is to get you across that finish line on August 30th. We also know that there are no two athletes that are the same. You all have different backgrounds, and you're doing this race or considering doing this race for different reasons. And we don't just see you as 200, 300 first-timers or newbies. We see you as a big group of individuals trying to accomplish an amazing goal, and we're really looking forward to it. And I hope you know that once this program starts, you will have email access, and if we even need to talk on the phone every now and then, I'm happy to do that. Anything to give you a peace of mind in accomplishing this goal. So I'm looking forward to meeting all of you somewhere along the road here.
Outstanding. Thank you, Rosalind. If you guys couldn't tell from her voice, Rosalind is about as motherly as it gets when it comes to getting into the sport. And I mean that as a plus, as a perk. Thank you, Rosalind.
Thank you.
Apart from Rosalind, you guys, quick note, if anybody has a question, the technology here that we're using on the WebEx, it doesn't allow for a lot of back and forth. If you guys have a question you want us to field right now, throw it to our Chicago Triathlon's Facebook page. Our staff is over here standing by in the office, and we'll definitely address those in real time. So check that out when you get a chance. Okay, moving ahead. This is a really quick idea of what the perception of our sport is all about. When people talk about triathletes, if you say you know a triathlete, if you say you want to be a triathlete, this is usually the visual that comes to mind. You know, a type A, 4% body fat, just stoic professional athlete. I don't know why we have that stigma. I certainly don't, and I learned everything I know from Rosalind. But the reality is that triathletes are fun people. This is who we are. We're goofy, we're quirky, we enjoy the challenge of what the sport brings, but we very much make it a lifestyle as well. So triathletes are a little bit older by nature. We're 38 years old on average. 40% of the marketplace is women. That number continues to grow year over year. You see a couple of statistics there as far as which races the triathlete audience races. Sprint distance by far and away is the go-to. 78% of all triathletes race sprint. Once you get up into the longer distance, you can see how those percentages drop right there, but everyone plans to race longer. So the idea is if you're curious about this sport, start short. You're going to finish your first race, you're going to have a great experience, and you're going to want more and more and more year over year. That's usually reality. So that said, we're now going to bring in another amazing individual, Troy Jacobson. Troy is the head coach and really the director of Lifetime Endurance. So he's a world-famous triathlon coach. You've seen his Spinner Bowls DVDs across the country. Troy's going to walk you through a really quick preparation for getting into triathlon as a first-timer. Troy?
Okay, Rudy, can you hear me?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, perfect. All right, well, thanks so much. I appreciate that. And hello, everyone. I'm actually phoning in from sunny Tucson, Arizona, so I know it's cold where you are. Actually, I was just there yesterday for some meetings, so great area. And I've done the race a couple times myself over the years. First time I did it, I think, was in the early 1990s. So I also have an affection for the event, and I think it's a wonderful race experience, and you guys are all in for an incredible treat. So what I'd like to do is go over some of the basics, some of the fundamentals, and it sounds like you're going to be touching on these in greater detail in the First Timers program, which I think is fantastic. You know, at Lifetime Endurance, which is our endurance coaching department at Lifetime Fitness, we work with athletes of all levels and abilities, primarily in our clubs, but also outside of the clubs. So we have a lot of first-timers who are members at our facilities, and they go through our training program. So it's really always exciting to see an athlete get engaged in the sport with an indoor try or a sprint try, and then gradually progress to the longer distances. But as a beginner, you have an absolutely unique experience ahead of you, and you also have a great opportunity to develop your skill sets right at the beginning. And you know what? It's so important that you do that, because if you build your technique properly, you practice perfect technique at the very beginning in all three disciplines, you will be amazed at how far you can go in the sport. So I'm really excited for each one of you on this call because you have an opportunity to start your foundation right here and now. So let's talk about the swim leg, and that's the slide up. So swim with confidence. Confidence with the swim comes from proper preparation. The swimming leg is always the most daunting for the adult athlete, especially those who don't have a swim background. Honestly, it is kind of scary to swim in the open water. So building confidence is so key, and the way you do that is by preparing, by putting in the yards, by getting the coaching. And I mentioned here skill and technique is first. Don't worry about swimming fast. Don't worry about the conditioning at first. That will come. Practice proper technique. Have a coach look at your form, make recommendations, and be very patient and work on that good form. Because again, if you can build the proper technique and that foundation at the get-go, you're going to be so better off down the road. Practice frequently. Like anything in life, the more we practice something effectively, the better we're going to get at it. So make sure that you're in that pool 2 to 4 times a week. And here I say use a coach. You don't need a coach. You can use an experienced swimmer who knows proper swim technique to help you. But it's absolutely helpful if you do use a coach and if you swim with a master's program. Work on your body position. You're going to hear a lot about body position from your coach because it's so important to have good body position in the water in order to swim efficiently. And then I put here breathe. A lot of newbie triathletes get in the water and they forget to breathe, believe it or not, and they panic. So it's just really important to establish a really simple breathing pattern. And these are the fundamentals. But you need to think about the fundamentals. Don't think about anything fancy or advanced at first. Just think of the basic fundamentals, especially with the swim. So you go into the next slide, if you will.
There you go.
All right. It's open. There we go. All right, and let's talk a little bit about the bike as we go through these basic fundamental tips. The bike sets up the run. Boy, how important is that to know? So it's such a unique sport. You swim, then you ride your bike, and then you hop off and you go run. So, that run leg is really a challenge too because you're so fatigued, or you can be fatigued. And honestly, your conditioning on the bike really does set up the run. And if you're conditioned well on the bike and you strategize and you pace properly on the bike, you'll be amazed at how well you run. But the bike is important because it accounts for 50% of the race. So most of your training commitment and time will probably go towards the bike leg each week. So keep that in mind. And it's a safe, effective way to build fitness. Cycling is a great sport. It's non-impact. The chance of injury is actually pretty low on the bike, which is nice. So it's a great way to build your aerobic endurance foundation. And hopefully a lot of you are riding indoors right now, doing your indoor cycling classes and starting to build your base. Work on your technique because like swimming, believe it or not, even though it seems so simple, right? You turn your pedals in circles. You've been doing that since you were a kid. Believe it or not, a good cyclist actually demonstrates really solid technique. And learning how to pedal smoothly at a higher cadence, that'll really pay off in the long run. So work on building that cadence. Get up in that 85 to 95 RPM range and be nice and smooth and supple in your pedaling action, and don't allow a lot of upper body movement. That's going to really help you out. Develop safe bike handling skills. So you will be out there on race day with a lot of other athletes. So it's important that when the weather permits, you get out on the road and you start learning how to ride your bike on the road. You learn how to go around corners. You learn about riding near other athletes and communicating with other athletes. Sometimes you'll be riding in a group setting if you go out on group rides, and that's a real important skill set. You need to learn how to communicate, how not to cross wheels, and all these little aspects that are important when it comes to group riding. And then incorporate various intensities into your training program. It's really important that you don't train at one level at all times. You're going to hear this from your coaches in the First Timers program, the whole concept of periodization and also interval training, where you'll incorporate harder, higher intensity workouts as well as lower intensity workouts, and each workout serves its purpose. So you want to make sure that you switch things up and keep it fresh by doing some hard days and some easy days. All right, and next slide, please. There you go. coming up here slowly. Perfect. The run leg. What are some key tips for the run? Run strong to the finish. Again, you need to focus on your proper form and technique. I know you've all been running since you were kids, but there are technical aspects to running that will make you more efficient and actually let you use less energy and make you run faster. And your coaches will talk about that. Build your volume and intensity slowly and allow for adaptation to occur. So if you're new to running, go out for a 20-minute walk run. Don't even run the whole thing. Just get started at the very beginning. And eventually, you'll be able to decrease the amount of walking you're doing. And soon before you know it, you'll be running the entire 20 minutes. And then you'll go to 30 minutes. And then you'll incorporate intervals. But you need to do this in a very slow, progressive manner, or you'll end up getting yourself injured or overtrained. So be really careful with that. Build your aerobic base and incorporate varying intensities. I mentioned that in the cycling area as well. And practice running off the bike. It's really a fun workout. It's called a brick workout, where you hop on the bike and you do maybe 30 minutes or 20 minutes or maybe an hour, whatever it may be, and then you transition immediately to the run. It's called a brick session. It's a great way to train your body to experience that transition from the bike to the run. Pay attention to your gauges, meaning always be aware of how your body's doing. Develop a keen sense of self-awareness and be intuitive with regard to your training. And so if you feel like, oh man, I just woke up, you wake up in the morning and just don't feel like training, you feel tired or you're sore, listen to your body. Take that day off or do a light active recovery workout. Incorporate runs on soft surfaces and or treadmills. So you'll be running a lot on the pavement or on asphalt, which is fine. You need to do that. You need to have that stress on the body. So it's important that you run on the pavement. But every once in a while, maybe a couple days a week, run on a soft trail or even a treadmill. I'm a big advocate of treadmill running. Next slide, please. Here we go. There must be a delay. Here we go. Okay. Let's talk about transition. So transition is part of the race. Hootie mentioned this earlier. Your time incorporates the transition into the entire race for your overall result. And high VO2 max doesn't matter when it comes to the transition leg, which is pretty cool because if you practice, you can actually go as fast as the pros in the transition, and that's pretty exciting. But you need to practice your pattern. You need to practice like you're swimming, you're cycling, and you're running. And I have my athletes practice frequently so they can buzz right through that transition. And keep it simple. Less is more, meaning that the more complex your transition area is, the more time it will take for you. Fancy can be foolish, and that applies to the same thing. You see people do their flying mounts and dismounts, getting on and off the bike, and sometimes they miss the saddle, which is never a pretty sight. So just keep it simple out there. Comfort is okay, but it's a little bit slower. But you know what? I would go for comfort in most cases. You'll see the pros, they won't wear socks and they'll get blisters, but they don't care. But I tell you what, if you want to be comfortable, take time, put your socks on. Whatever you need to do to be comfortable out there, you should do. And then know the flow. You need to know the flow of the transition area. Walk the transition area prior to the event. Know where the swim comes in. Know where your bike is, because your bike will be there with lots of other bikes and they all look the same. So you need to walk the transition area and know the flow. Snap that helmet strap when you head out on that bike, because that's a absolute DQ offense if you don't strap your helmet strap. And be courteous of your neighbors. You'll be in there pretty tight with all the other bikes on the racks. So just try to be courteous of everyone. Help everyone else out as well. Next slide, please. Okay, and then race preparation, a little touch base on this really quick. It's normal to feel anxious as race day approaches, so preparation is the key, and you need to do your homework. So learn the basics. You know what I mean by that? Get on YouTube and look at some videos of triathlon. If you're new to the sport, really get on there and do a little bit of your own research and see what triathlon looks like from that perspective. Create checklists. What are you going to bring? All the different items you'll need to bring for the swim, for the bike, for the run. If you don't have checklists, it's easy to forget things. Develop a race day strategy, and I know you'll probably go over this in your clinics, but it's important to know about pacing, to know about nutrition. All these little details will help lend to a successful race day experience. Develop that sound nutrition plan, get your gear organized and race ready, stay focused and alert, and execute your plan out there on race day while being flexible and willing to modify it if necessary. Next slide, please. Okay, and here's just some of the rules for USA Triathlon. This is a USAT sanctioned event, and of course we'll be going over these rules more in the future, but you can see some of the illegal equipment. Smartphones, iPods, MP3 players, radios, and headphones are considered illegal equipment, and they are to ensure that you hear emergency and critical instructions, so they will not be allowed. The helmet, while on the bike, I mentioned this earlier, you need to have that chin strap fastened. Bike position, you must remain to the right side of the bike lane for the Kids Triathlon and Super Sprint and left for the Chicago Triathlon unless you are passing. And maintain that 3 bike lengths between yourself and the rider in front of you. No side-by-side riding is permitted, and there are variable time penalties. So drafting is a no-no in triathlon, and again, you'll go over that in greater detail. Unsportsmanlike conduct is obviously a disqualification, and you must cover the entire course. Well, that goes without saying. You have to do the entire race, and unregistered participants are not allowed to do that, to bandit the event. So some simple rules by USAT. You'll probably go over those in greater detail in the future, but you need to know the rules so you don't get out there and have a penalty and wonder why. So definitely know the rules. Next slide, Hootie.
All right, thank you, sir. Anything else you want to throw in there,
Okay.
Troy?
Yep, perfect. Well, everyone, thanks so much. I appreciate the time and opportunity to speak with you. And if you ever have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to help. And I wish you all the best in your training and preparation.
Thanks very much, Troy.
Thanks, Lee.
So for what it's worth, I know there was a lot just thrown at you with Coach Troy. He's an amazing coach, and everything he says is there's logic behind it. But if you didn't understand what VO2 max meant, or periodization, or threshold, don't sweat it. This program is not about that, so we'll definitely keep it dialed in, and we'll make you all rock stars like you should be. But let's get into some of the equipment. This is definitely part of Live Grit's world, and Jacobs is going to walk you through some of the required versus the optional components with our lovely sport.
All right, thanks guys. So here again, we're going to talk from a retail perspective or from the athlete's needs. You guys all have the desire to do the event. You all have, obviously, the capability to sign up for the event or get on the webinar. So we're going to talk a little bit about what can make the event a lot more fun and a lot easier to do from the gear perspective of things. Our whole mentality is being laid back, so we offer a variety of gear in our store. Everything's categorized into learn, train, and achieve. And what that does for our athletes is break it down as to what's necessary, what's suggested, and then kind of the icing on the cake, what would be the best suited to do that job. So we're going to run you through, just like Coach Troy did, all 4 of the 4 legs of the event: the swim, the bike, the run, and most importantly, the transition. And we'll talk about the required gear or what's necessary, as well as some suggested gear. Obviously, if you guys have any questions, get on Chicago Triathlon's Facebook page, ask them. Find us on Facebook, Live Grit. Find our website, our email address. Whatever you need to do to get a hold of us, we're always happy to have the conversation. It's a big, scary triathlon world out there, and we're here to help you guys through each and every question you might have. So the swim is the first phase of the triathlon, and for most people it's the most intimidating, even though it requires the least amount of equipment. At the top here you see that we have our Speedos and Snorkels clinic, 2 things you may want but don't necessarily have to use in the swim. That's Wednesday, May 6th. That's the kickoff of our 6-part clinic series in our store, and we're going to answer all questions swim-related in that clinic. And the pictures on the right, in that bottom right there, you see we have our Monday Night Swim Club. Up top, you see some of our athletes swimming last year at the Chicago Triathlon, and then there's a nice little photo of some suggested gear. So the necessary components to the swim are obviously your swimsuit and your goggles. Swimsuit is also exchangeable for a triathlon suit or tri-specific clothing. So you don't have to change between the swim and the bike. You can wear clothes that will serve both purposes and even serve that third through the run. You need the goggles because the lake is hard to see through even with goggles, so without them you'll struggle to see. In the Chicago Triathlon, you'll need a swim cap as well. That's going to designate your wave. For people with longer hair, obviously it keeps the hair out of your face. And then we're of the faith that a wetsuit may or may not be necessary. We got into this debate just this morning at our store, whether or not it's necessary. In the swim phase of things, the wetsuit is seen as kind of the elephant in the room. Everybody understands that it's an issue, but no one really talks about it. The wetsuit's going to do a lot of things, including making the swim easier for you. It's a more efficient material. It's more buoyant, so if anything were to happen, you'd be very, very safe in floating in the suit, and it's also going to keep you a little bit warmer. We recommend wetsuits. Certainly you can see in that photo there, people are swimming without them. It will make the swim a little bit easier, make you a little bit comfortable, so long as you get into the water in your wetsuit before race day. There's a little bit different feeling to it. In our store, we call it freak out mode. We eliminate freak out mode for all of our athletes. We're going to put you in the suit. You can come down one of our Saturday morning swims. You can come to one of the Chicago Swim Series clinics throughout the summertime. We'll get you in that lake. We'll get you in that wetsuit. You look like a terrible, terrible superhero, but I promise it makes the swim a lot more fun. Under the suggested list there, you'll see our training aids. There's a number of different tools you can use in the pool as well as in the open water to work on form, to work on technique, to work on the skill set, to work on endurance, make it more difficult, less difficult. Whatever you want to do in the swim, we'll help you out with it. Like Coach Troy said, there's a million different ways to practice your technique. We want to get you in the water frequently, and these training aids would really help you in the water, make you faster, more confident swimmer, but certainly they're not necessary. The one thing that's not on here that I would say is necessary is getting in the water. Like Coach Troy said, you have to get out into the open water beforehand so you know what to expect. The bike phase of the event is what most people are intimidated by just from a pure gear standpoint. Everyone thinks you need so many bells and whistles, you need the fastest bike in the world. The number of questions we get about the bike phase of things is higher than any other of the legs of the triathlon. You can see on Wednesday, May 27th, we're going to have our Flat Tires and Noisy Gears clinic, teach you a little bit about your bike, how to ride the bike, how to take care of the bike, all the things that you might need on top of the actual bicycle. So be sure to check out that clinic as well. The only necessary components you need, a bicycle, whether that's your mom's cruiser bike from the attic, the bike you borrowed from your brother, whatever it may be, I promise you won't be the guy with the goofiest looking bike. There's always a crazy bike out there. We have the Divvy Wave as well in the Super Sprint. So if your bike's nicer than a Divvy, lighter weight, a better blue than the Divvy, you'll fit right in. You don't need the nicest, fanciest, most expensive bike out there to compete in this event. It's a lot more fun with one of those, but you certainly don't need it. You need the helmet. That's a requirement by USAT. You need some sort of cycling-specific clothing, whether that be a tri-suit. You saw in the picture before you guys were jumping into the swim without their shirt. Definitely a shirt on the bike. And then we had this debate as well, sunglasses. You want some sort of eye protection on the bike. You can get moving a little bit quicker. You don't want dust or crud flying up from somebody else's wheel and getting you in the eye. Suggested equipment, we're going to suggest shoes and pedals. It makes the pedaling stroke, like Coach Troy said, a little bit smoother, a little bit more efficient. It's not as scary as everyone makes it out to be. Clipping in and out, or this clipless system that everybody refers to, kind of a rite of passage in our world to tip over on your bike going 0 miles an hour on the lakefront path in front of preferably a group of people to laugh at you. It happens once and it never happens again. Shoes and pedals are a little bit more comfortable than just your gym shoes, but certainly not a necessity. Gloves and a computer, things that can make it more comfortable, a little bit more data-oriented, but again, not necessary. And then flat tire repair kit. If you come to this clinic or you come into our store at any time, we'll be more than happy to show you how to change your own flat tire. It's not rocket science. It's just something people need to learn once, and then it's pretty easy to do after that. That bottom picture there is what we're calling our First Timers package. Both men and women have a package available that includes a bike, a helmet, pedals, and shoes, and both of those are at $1,000. So check out our website. It's listed under what we do. It's called the First Timers package, and it's a great way to get into the sport. But like I said, if you have a bike at home, you need a helmet, whatever you might need, come into our store. We'll take care of you guys. The run section, this is probably my favorite title to a clinic. Nipples and toenails, things you won't lose on your run, I promise you that. It's Wednesday, June 17th, excuse me. Everyone hears the horror stories from the marathon or the half marathon about, you know, a bloody shirt or missing toenails. Running's a lot easier than that. It's my worst sport by far, but it's something you can overcome. Like Coach Troy said, through practice, through coaching, through form exercises, things like that, you can strengthen yourself up. You see there on the right-hand side, that's our Tuesday night run club. Tuesdays at 6 p.m., we go out for a run, and as you can see, rain, snow, or sun, we go out. That was a picture from just last week when we had 1.5 feet of snow on the ground. That was a fun run. Obviously, for the run, you only need a few essentials. You need some shoes, whether that be your workout shoes, a specific pair of running shoes, some sort of shoes to run in that you can also be biking in if you haven't used cycling-specific shoes. You need a hat or a visor. That sun can get real, real warm in August. And then a race belt. This is something that's only necessary for an event like the Chicago Triathlon. It's how you get your race number onto your body, something you cannot race without. They need your number to cross the finish line. Some things to make it a little bit easier, some quick laces, ties your shoes a little bit easier, sunglasses, again, to keep the sun out of your eyes, and a nutrition belt to keep some nutrition on the body, as well as some hydration, and I believe Coach Troy is going to talk about that in a little bit as well. The fourth aspect of the race, which people tend to forget about, is that transition area. So we've called it our pre-race, transition, post-race area, and we have 3 clinics to address just these parts of the race. Make the Change on July 8th is all about transitions. Like Coach Troy said, it's something that needs to be practiced. You need to set up your area. You need to be confident in the transition area. You guys in the First Timers program get a dedicated rack. You're also going to get dedicated support. We have our Gritty Essentials July 29th, which talks about the gear you'll need before, during, and after the race. And then August 19th, we have Get in the Mood, which is our kind of mental focus aspect. That's just about 2 weeks before the triathlon. In transition, you're going to need sunscreen, your timing chip, and some nutrition. So your timing chip is critical throughout the race to track you through the whole time. That's what times you, hence the name. Some sunscreen to protect yourself, and some nutrition to make sure you can finish. Suggested, and this will come up in all of your practices, a towel or a mat to stand on, kind of mark your territory. You see in that picture there, it can be a little hectic. You want an area that's just yours while respecting your neighbors. Some anti-chafe cream. You'll be surprised at which part of the body the clothes like to rub on: shoulders, armpits, hips, things like that. There's some products out there designed to alleviate that. Some extra shoes or sandals to get to the start line, as well as to get back to transition. Hootie's going to talk about gear check and things like that. You'll be without all of your stuff just before the swim start, and you want something to walk down to the start in. And then extra nutrition. It never hurts to have more food than you need in the transition area in case you do get a little bit extra hungry or you need something extra to drink. So that's all the gear that we've run through. I know that's a lot of information. The entire industry is full of information. We want to break everything down for you as quickly as we can. So if you have any questions, find us online, find us on our Facebook page, give us a call, an email. If you're bored, just come by the store. Whatever we can do to make this a little bit easier for you, we're going to be sure to do. Thanks so much, guys, and I'm going to turn it back over to Hootie.
Nice. Thank you, sir. All right, guys, we're going to get into the mechanics of what race weekend actually looks like. So I know a lot of you are curious of this. And at the same time, we have had some questions about the First Timers program. The conversation is heavily leaning towards that way. We do have additional spaces available that we are releasing tonight. So hopefully in about 10 minutes here, we'll get to that. It's a really simple process. We've got about 30 extra spots that we're opening up to get people into. And we will go from there. So stand by on that. Let's get into the logistics of the race weekend, though. If you've never seen the Chicago Triathlon, you are in for a treat. It is large, it is chaotic, it is awesome, but it is very controlled as far as the chaos goes. What's unique in the triathlon space, especially for you first-timers, if you've run a 5K, a half marathon, if you've been around the running circuit, you're familiar with packet pickup and that whole process. Well, triathlon has this, and it's actually it's very mandated in the fact that you have to go to these because of a couple of things. One is to sign a liability waiver from our governing body. You keep hearing about USAT. That's USA Triathlon. That is our national federation, basically, who sets the rules for triathlon. So everyone has to go to the expo to pick up your packet. You have to go through the insurance process, which if you've registered for this race yet, you've seen a $12 fee that's tied on to racing over race weekend. That's unfortunate, but that's reality with what it takes to come into the sport of triathlon. The other side to the expo, and something that we started last year because of a lot of changes, which we'll touch on quickly, we required course talks. So much like we're doing right now, to give you a background of what you're about to get into, we made changes to our course. We changed our transition flow. We did a lot of unique things that athletes who have raced this for 30 years, year over year, have not been familiar with. We are continuing that again in 2015. So before you come and pick up your packet and get your timing chip and get your t-shirts and all that stuff, you're going to be asked to come through a 30-minute course talk. And we'll do exactly that. We'll talk about all the logistics and everything that you basically will keep you safe, help keep everybody next to you safe, and help you have a much more enjoyable, successful day. So that will be coming around. You're able to either RSVP in advance for specific sessions that happen at the Hilton. Everything is housed at the Hilton Chicago, which is right downtown, and it's about a half mile from everything, between the start line, the finish line. Transition's just a bit farther up the road, but it's the central hub of all of our logistics. The expo is actually the nation's largest triathlon expo as well. It's been around forever. It's huge. It occupies the entire basement of the Hilton, which is a massive space unto itself. At the Hilton, you can go through body marking. You're familiar with triathletes having Sharpies written on their arms with race numbers and wave numbers and all of those things. We actually do tri-tats, so we do temporary tattoos here in the Hilton. But we'll get those to you over the weekend, and there's also a bike valet. So when you come to pick up your packet, you can bring your bike right into the Hilton, and it's a super convenient thing. As a tip, and I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here, but as you come into the expo, we really think it's a good idea for you guys to come in on Saturday, because you can check in, go through your course talk, you can bring your bike, ride your bike to the Hilton, leave the Hilton, and then take your bike over to transition, where you can drop your bike overnight in a massive secured area. That's our transition area. The hours will be determined a little bit later, but logistically it makes your Sunday morning a lot easier to not have to worry about your bike. So that's a quick and dirty on the expo unto itself. Logistically, Saturday is the next day there. We have two races that happen on the north side. So while Sunday is the massive event downtown, Saturday we have the kids race and then the super sprint race. Kids race is for anyone ages 7 to 14, and then the super sprint is full of adults. The super sprint is, it's half the distance of a sprint. So if you can remember a couple of the slides prior to, it's a pretty short distance event. Most people finish that within 45 minutes. And in my mind, it's not a worthless event, but if you're really committed to the sport, most of your workouts will be longer than your actual race experience. So you're probably worth doing more. Let's go longer. Let's go sprint. Let's go international. Just some friendly advice. If you've never seen the kids race, come out, hang out, volunteer with us. It's a riot to see 100 screaming kids running into the water, swimming a quick 50 yards, and then exiting all at once. And the other piece that's amazing with this race, which you can see in the photo there, the Divvy Wave, which is part of the Super Sprint race. We partnered with Divvy last year, who's here in the city. 100 of these 50-pound bikes are available, first come, first serve, to any athletes who register for the Divvy Wave option on the registration page. Last year sold out within about a month. We have just under, maybe around 40 bikes left right now. I don't know the exact number offhand, but if you're an avid triathlete who wants to try something different, jump into this thing and then come race the big dance on Sunday. Sunday, we've talked about this one. We've probably beat this to death, but this is the big deal. Transition area, that same area, which we've got a slide to show you exactly where this is, opens at 4 o'clock in the morning. So if you're a local, if you're a Chicagoan who lives in Lincoln Park or somewhere on the north side or wherever you are, it's very, very normal to come out of your house while people are still walking home from their nights out. It's a very common thing. Transition opens at 4 o'clock. Depending on which event you're racing, there are different components of the transition area that will require you to come or go. We won't get into the logistics of all that, but you'll see on the communications that come out prior to the expo, if you're racing the sprint wave, you're basically starting later in the morning. Therefore, you can sleep in a little bit longer and check in later. If you're racing the longer distance race, you're going to start first, which means you're going to be required to be there earlier. However, you can get out of there a little bit earlier in the afternoon. So we've tried to make it convenient, and hosting a large race in the past, That's been a challenge, but I think last year some of the changes we made really made a great impact for the marketplace. Back to what Troy was mentioning about the sport of triathlon as well. Because of the complexity, because of the 3 courses, and the flow of athletes coming in and out of basically every corner of downtown, it's up to you as an athlete to be on time and be punctual. If you ever try to show up late and transition is already closed, or if you miss your wave start, or whatever the excuse might be, chances are you're going to be disqualified. And it happens all the time. It's very unfortunate, but because we can't just throw somebody into the race, especially for safety reasons, and we've got to be able to track all the swimmers who go in and out of the water, all the cyclists who come in and off of the bike course, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of requirements I think we're going to ask of triathletes, and that's just because of the safety issue at large. All right. Let's get technical with the course. So we're talking about Sunday's races. This is the international race, which is the longer distance. They go first, and then the sprint race, which goes after. Both courses for the swim course start at Balbo and Lakeshore Drive. So if you're familiar with Grant Park, right in the heart of the city, it's right there. There's a bunch of open water in the massive marina, free of boats, free of clutter, and all the sprint athletes start swimming north. You swim about a half mile and you exit the water. The internationals will swim south first, make a left-hand turn after a quarter mile, then swim straight north. And we don't have a picture of this on this graphic here, but you're truly paralleling the lakeshore. You're no longer than maybe 30 yards at the most being away from that wall, which makes it incredibly spectator-friendly. So unlike a lot of other triathlons that go out into deeper water, the water here is around 10 to 12 feet deep. It's not terrible, but your family, your friends, your loved ones, they can all basically watch you through the entire duration of the swim, which makes Chicago really unique. From the exit of the swim, you'll run a little bit. It's about a third of a mile that is completely carpeted on our lakefront path on the sidewalk, basically. Run into transition. If you're racing the sprint distance, which is the short distance race, you'll head up onto Lakeshore Drive. We close down the interior 2 lanes of this 4-lane highway. So you'll go north about 6 miles, you'll turn around up at Foster, and you'll head straight south. If you're doing the international, this is where it gets fun. This is a major change that we brought last year. And the first bike course change in 18 years, actually. So those who are racing the long distance race, you're now able to ride through certain parts of the loop that most of us have never even seen. Last year, again being the first year, once you came off of Lakeshore Drive, doing the same first loop that the sprint distance did, you cut west on Wacker, and we put you on intermediate and then lower Wacker Drive. So you may have seen some of the visuals from our Facebook pages or some of our promotions. You're basically riding through the Batcave, and this is one of the fastest, most incredible views of the city you'll ever get cruising down. If it's 10 miles per hour or if it's 30 miles per hour, you are in a really unique place. So you'll wrap around the loop, a completely unobstructed, traffic-free roadway there. You'll come back, and then the internationals go down 1 more level to enter the McCormick Place busway. And most Chicagoans, again, have never seen this road unless you rode this last year. This is a secret passageway basically built from the heart of the loop underneath Millennium Park, and it cuts directly down to McCormick Place. So it's a 2.5-mile span that was purposely built for charter buses to take conventioneers from the city down to McCormick Place. So we've again partnered with Metra to be able to provide that course, and that is a really unique area. Just like the swim, spectators now have the ability to watch you from different roadways and bridges right on top of the bikeway, which is incredible. So the bike obviously wraps up. You head into transition for the second time, and then you start your run. All athletes head straight south. And the run is a fairly simple and incredibly gorgeous course. Parallels the swim area where you just started. Both groups, both the sprint and the international races, head south around the front side of the shed, which is the big aquarium here. The internationals will go farther than the sprinters, obviously. The sprinters turn around at Soldier Field. The internationals go down to 31st Street, just past McCormick Place. Both groups turn around come back around the shed, and then you finish in the same finish area as the Chicago Marathon. So right at Columbus and Balboa, massive structure, tons of crowds. It's one of the best post-race parties that the city has, outside of the marathon. We aspire to be the marathon one day. So the course is really unique in that the changes made last year increased convenience, and then the spectator viewing is unparalleled. Outside of the course, this is a little bit of a viewpoint into transition. So transition it's almost like a refugee camp. If you've seen some of those photos, you're bringing in a lot of gear within a very confined amount of space. It just is what it is. That's the beauty of triathlon. You have an outdoor locker room of 2 inches wide, or 2 feet wide by maybe 6 feet deep. This is there's actually a purpose design built to it. So after a lot of tinkering, this is the evolution that our operations director here, who's actually sitting across from me, Julie, she built this program where internationals and sprinters are now divided within the transition area, which allows for that flexible transition access. So as an athlete, when you come into race weekend and you go to the Hilton and you pick up your packet, you'll be given a rack number, and it basically pinpoints you to exactly where you need to be in the transition area on race weekend. So it's a massive map. This doesn't do it justice here, but we didn't quite have the bandwidth on our webinar here to throw the big map in here. Outside of knowing where you'll be placed, and by the way, you start in waves of upwards of 100 to 150 other individuals. That's how we start the sequence in the water. That group who you start with, you also rack next to. So you're all basically in the same area of this massive outdoor locker room, and the flow happens all simultaneously. So you'll see a lot of friends come out of the water who you started with. You'll see them go out on the bike who you started with, on and on and on. The other map that you see in the foreground there is access points. We won't get into all of this right here and right now, but because of what's happening, because races occurring, there's swimmers, there's bikers, there's runners, there's spectators. If you're going to come into transition at certain parts of the morning, and this is prior to starting the event, we're going to require you to come in from separate corridors. So if you're racing the long distance, if you're racing the short distance, whatever your story might be, we're going to be very specific in guiding you, much like the Chicago Marathon does, guiding you into Grant Park, depending on your corrals. We will do this for transition come race weekend. But just some food for thought to realize how much thought and planning has to go into getting a lot of people through a very tight corridor. So that's the ins and the outs of race day. Again, this is a lot. We realize that we're trying to feed a little bit of information about everything. If you're part of the First Timers program, we'll get into that. We'll dive deep. If you're not, we're readily available. You'll see our contact information on the last page here, but we want to continue to inspire you guys to answer questions and to get you guys hooked on this sport and this race. One of the reasons we've done this to go to this extent and partner with guys like Jacob and Gillian at Live Grit is because of the success of some of our community activation, which is really phased around the Chicago Clinic series. So 3 years ago, we started this outdoor open water swim clinic series, completely free to the public, and the idea is to get people comfortable with open water swimming. As first-time triathletes, most of you are comfortable riding a bike. Pretty much everyone has run away from somebody at some point in your life. Not everyone's as comfortable in the swim. Even if you can swim laps indoors, you're probably not as prone to swimming outdoors in open water with no lane lines, with active fish, with other bodies. That can be tough. So we created this series of 5 or 6 different events throughout the year. This is the calendar in front of you of these 5 events that we are hosting that start in June and go through the gamut of Chicago Triathlon Race Week. Upwards of 400 people attend each of these. They're completely free. There is capacity because of working with the Park District and lifeguards, and especially afterwards when we go to the Cafe Olivia and have beers, which is right adjacent to the beach. So put these on your radar. These will be posted on Facebook. Registration will open for these in May, I believe, but stay tuned. We'll definitely reach out and keep you posted with these. And we're just about wrapping up here, guys. So I have 8 o'clock. We're pretty much on the money. A couple of housekeeping deals. If you guys want, if you are interested in registering for the First Timers program, this is how you're going to do it. We've got those 30 spots. It's going to be open on a first come, first served basis, and truly it's open right now. How we're going to track if you guys are part of that, you need to enter that code, first timer. So if you go to our Chicago Triathlon race page, you can click on the registration link, you can click sprint, because only the sprint distance race option is open for this first timers program, and you can put that code in there. The code will give you a $5 discount for what that's worth, kind of a nice little savings, but it will track us to be able to know how many of you are actually redeeming this because of limited capacity. Jacob can only fit so many people in their store, which is probably a good problem for those guys. If you're not interested in the First Timers program, but you want to be on the hook for the Chicago Tri, use the other code. Use webinar. It will work on any of our race distances, from the kids to the super sprint to the international and even the triple challenge if you want to go crazy and do all of our races. The codes are right there. These will be emailed to you a little bit later tonight, and that code will expire Sunday night. So if Sunday is anyone's payday on the 15th, make it happen, make it rain. If you are part of the First Timers program, part of the perk of that is that you're going to get this training program as well. Coach Troy alluded to a lot of the mechanics of periodization and VO2 max and a lot of things that you don't really need to know, but they might be part of this program or they might not. We're going to give you a written calendar, and we're going to have this one-on-one interaction where Rosalind will come in and really guide your progression as an athlete. We're going to walk you through all the gear you're going to need with Jacob and these guys, and we're going to continue to keep you guys abreast of what's happening on the race side. If we do any more changes on our course, if we have any other operational magic happen, we will keep you advised because you are on our radar and you guys are all very important to us. So our contact information is down there. We have an office right here in the Loop. All of our staff is on board. We love this sport. We love this race. And we want you guys to reach out and let us know what we can do to help you. So our phone number is right there. Our email address is around. We are on Facebook. We're here for you guys. If you have any questions, you're welcome to chime in there. There is a little bit of a chatter that we figured out with the WebEx here. We're still manning the Facebook page, which is Chicago Triathlon's Facebook page, that is. And I think I'm going to wrap it up there. So if you guys have any other input, feel free to reach out one-on-one or use this chat button. But I will wrap this up. We will send we'll send out a post email which has the link to be able to download the webinar if you want to share it with any family or friends or whomever. And then we'll provide all the other necessary content within this. Okay. Thank you guys. Appreciate you joining us on a lovely cold winter night. Triathlon season is approaching. Have a good night, guys.